Hello.
Hey, hello.
Just a second, I can hear you.
Are you able to hear me?
Is it working now?
Pardon me?
Perfect. I can hear you now.
Awesome. Yeah, I was unmuted. Don't know, maybe the network connection or something.
No, my speaker setup changed.
I'm glad you are able to make it today. I mean, last 2 weeks back in the previous meeting, when I said I'll present, what happened afterwards was there was a icing event in Austin, which knocked out all the power for most of the city. I mean, this is just so unheard of, but
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it became, we were out of power. And so.
Yes, but it's better if you do it today, because then I could also join.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad that instead of last week, we are doing it this week.
Just out of curiosity, are you applying for Sandbox or for incubation, or is this, or are you only presenting?
So we do have plans to apply for Sandbox, not immediately, like maybe sometime in this next few months.
Okay.
Right now, I want to get it in front of the community to get more feedback, more participation. I mean, based on that, then we will see where we can take it, because usually for Sandbox there are certain criteria they look at, right? So one of the criteria generally is how best fit it is for the community, and if there are community members who are using it. And from that angle, I thought we are at a good place to share it with everyone and see if there is interest. So yeah, I mean, based on this presentation and then engagement with others, we will definitely in next few months are considering that option.
I can remember, I think you had a presentation 1.5 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah, so to be honest, I also don't remember whether I did it. Maybe I did it here in CNCF
Yes.
app delivery. Yeah, I think I did this, right? Yeah,
Because
I mean,
know, because I reached out to you.
Yeah, exactly. And so at that time we were, so this was 1.5 years back. We were still in early stages of identifying really the problem and building out the solution. And so it was very rudimentary at that point, what I presented. But now we have something which is much more, built out. And so I thought it will be another good time to come back and present. But yeah, good you reminded me of that, because I was also thinking probably I came to this forum sometime back, but it was not in the recent months. It was maybe year and a half back. Yeah. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Devdatta.
Hello, Josh.
How are you?
Yes, it's some time ago since you were here, but it was funny because then a previous chair of the tag asked us, told us about your project.
Yeah.
And it looked really promising. So.
Oh, that's, yeah, definitely.
I'm really curious about how this evolved.
How this come? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, at that point we were more focused on getting multiple operators and creating sort of what we were calling platform stacks declaratively. So platform as code is what we were sort of building out our ideas on. And so that went some, I mean, it made some progress, but then we realized that just building a very broader, like use any operator which is in your cluster to build out your declarative application stacks may not have that wide an applicability. And also our engagements with our early customers, we saw that, well, that was not the issue that people were struggling with. It was more around multi-tenancy and how to, do things. So let me just pause there because I think it's 10 o'clock, but yeah, we can continue a discussion afterwards.
Oh
But
yeah.
when
Hey,
it
so that
comes
gives
to
me a chance.
multi-tenancy and so on, you have the perfect guy here with Josh.
Yeah, we
Awesome.
we chatted because I know Devdatta when Alex brought up the writing a paper about multi-tenancy, then written by the Kubernetes folks, and
I know.
chatted about that.
Yeah, and I mean the operator white paper that came out at that point, apart from like very early participation from myself and our team, I was not able to participate a whole lot just because of the other like things which were going on. And but I was reading up on that white paper. It has come out really well. I don't know if there is another version 3 or something which is being planned. But in that we can definitely participate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super interested to hear your presentation. I just looked over KubePlus and stuff, and there's a lot of, to me, it reminds me a lot of Operator Lifecycle Manager. So I spent a lot of time in that. So that might be some of my questions.
Awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we would love that. In fact, there is, I haven't really looked recently into Operator Lifecycle Manager or the Helm operator, but what you will realize when we talk through and give the presentation is it is KubePlus does something similar to what Helm operator used to do. Recently, I haven't checked, but there's a little twist where we don't need to really create a separate operator for an application. And as the presentation starts, I will go into all those details. But yeah, would love to chat about OLM and all the things related to operator.
Yeah, I'm probably going to share. After this, I'll probably share this with that team.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I mean, whenever you want to officially roll it off, I'm fine.
I think let's wait some minutes for people to join.
Okay.
So 2 to 3 minutes.
So usually while we wait, I just wanted to ask about I saw there is the platform working group, and then there is so platform working group is part of the CNCF app delivery tag. Yes. Is it okay? And so that has a separate set of meetings than this.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
and
project meetings. So,
okay. So what are the people that come there and here, are they same? Or the reason I'm asking is do you think if I want to reach out and get more feedback from folks, then would it be advisable to also come in that forum and do a presentation, or just doing it here is enough?
Working group, so you're asking the right person. Let's talk about it. I mean, looking over, you're going to present, but it kind of looks like KubePlus creates platform capabilities. There's a couple questions I have about that, but I'm not sure, if we have, right now, we're not really having presentations about projects.
Okay. But that's fine.
We should be, we want to mention this. We want to make it.
No, and I mean, I'm just wondering if you are in the working group, if there are presentations happening. Of course, I do understand that the sort of agenda for that working group is very specific, and probably KubePlus is not, because I read through the recent meeting notes there, and I felt that maybe we are not directly doing what is being discussed in the platform working group, so that's fine. But let's talk. We can talk.
See, after your presentation, I think. Okay. There's one question I have, which I'm saving for the end.
Okay, absolutely. No. Yeah, but a lot of good activity happening overall in this space. So excited to be listening on and reading up about things that you all are doing.
Yeah, I hope that I hope we make this a place that's a vendor neutral place where we can all collaborate and share and improve the experience for our users, basically.
For users, No, I mean, that's the sort of holy grail where, I mean, I saw the presentations, the recent couple presentations in this group, as well as the working group, platform working group. And both those projects, I mean, the problem has been there since we have so many vendors all along, right? And trying to sort of build a uniform layer to hide the details of vendor APIs and provide one sort of way to rule them all. And so it's interesting how that theme keeps on coming up. Yeah, it's difficult to really see.
I've been thinking about that a little too. Like, I wonder if it's because we approached cloud in a bottoms up kind of way. Like we used open source projects and create it. And now we're like, wait, we're doing the same thing in 10 different ways. Like,
yeah. Well, yeah, that too. And I mean, just the differentiation. So vendor, those who are not open source, they design their APIs to have, some of their own key advantages or key strong points. And so there will always be a difference. So there was someone who was asking on the chat, I forgot the name, that that always be a common minimal denominator of the API capabilities that such systems will have to implement, because you cannot really have, support every small little unique feature that each vendor has. Yeah, and I remember back I thought of in OpenStack world. So I used to work at Rackspace before CloudArk, and there was the project that we were working, building out the platform as a service for OpenStack, Solum, the project. And in that context, this was around 2014, 2015 timeframe. This question came up quite often, that, well, are we going to do common minimum denominator of all the other, cloud providers?
Yeah, always comes up.
Yeah, so it was very sort of reading that again after 7-8 years. I was like, okay, yeah, so that problem is still there. It has not gone away.
It's the commons.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's. I love chatting, but let's go ahead and get this going.
Absolutely.
We'll publish this after. We'll put a pointer to here's where Devdatta started.
Okay. Absolutely. That's great. So do I have sharing capabilities? I think I do have. Awesome. So let me share my screen, and awesome. So what I'm going to do is, I have a very short presentation. Let me make it full screen so all of us can see it. All right. So hey all, I'm Devdatta Kulkarni. I also go by Dev, founder of CloudArk. And so today what I'm going to talk about is KubePlus, which is our open source Kubernetes operator for multi-instance multi-tenancy. Okay, and the picture here on the left is sort of a quick giveaway of what we mean by multi-instance multi-tenancy, where on a Kubernetes cluster, there are separate instances of the same application that basically deploy multiple separate instances for separate tenants. So let's look at this multi-instance multi-tenancy pattern in a bit more details, and who better to ask these days than to ChatGPT. So what one of our team members did was just ask this question to ChatGPT about what is multi-instance multi-tenancy, and then after some iterative question and answer sessions, this is what we got, which is actually quite accurate. So this multi-instance multi-tenancy pattern refers to software architecture where each tenant is assigned a separate instance of the application. So the same application, but you just spin up multiple instances of this. So each tenant has its own separate data, configuration, and customizations. So sort of the picture that you see on the left side, you have separate WordPress instances for 3 different teams, for example, or chatbots, or like database instances, and so on. So benefits, all of us are probably aware of these having a separate application instance provides good amount of security isolation. It's very easy to do customization and then control each instance as per that particular tenant's needs. And then it's also faster to go to market because you don't have to worry about re-architecting the application code to support multiple tenants. And this is especially seen in the use cases and the domains where this type of pattern is quite prevalent. So B2B application vendors, software vendors, what we have seen is if they have to host a SaaS solution, then the best way for them and easiest way is to, on public cloud, for example, they would end up creating a separate instance of their application for their end tenant. So this could be a WordPress service provider hosting separate WordPress instances for their end customers. Similarly, internal platform teams, and this is probably the point which can resonate with this group here. So platform teams, all of us have seen, are tasked with creating and maintaining applications for internal product teams. So for example, in our experience, platform teams have been asked to spin up Jenkins instances or even monitoring instances and so on. And so platform teams invariably have to maintain, spin up separate application instances per product team. And so there also this pattern comes into play. And then the final place where we have seen this happen is where B2B vendors typically can be asked by their customers to deliver the application on the customer's infrastructure. So rather than hosting a solution in the B2B software vendor's own infrastructure, the customer will ask them to remotely manage and perform day-to-day operations on their infrastructure. So in all these cases, multi-instance, multi-tenancy pattern exists today. We have seen it in real world when we work with customers. They are using this today. So how does this? Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
So are you saying that one of the benefits is that you can take what would otherwise be a single tenant app and just instantly transform it into multi-tenant by deploying it in separate namespaces?
Yeah, I mean, the app's code, of course, we are not going to change. That will be the multi-tenancy within the application architecture. But so the app doesn't change at all. But for every separate customer, you just spin up a new instance of the app. So deploy it in, create a separate instance, and that is what the multi-instance. So the multi-instance stands for that. You have multiple instances, each serving a separate team or a tenant or a customer. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So how does this? So by the way, this this picture here, if you look at the left-hand side, all the applications shown there, there is no mention of Kubernetes in any of this, because at least on this particular chart, this particular slide, we don't want to mention it because this pattern is not very specific to Kubernetes. It has been around in the old days or before Kubernetes. Also, vendors have been doing this, just that they were creating these separate instances on VMs. Okay, now in the Kubernetes world, also now this cloud native world, this pattern has been recognized, and last year we worked with others in our community on the multi-tenancy documentation, which is available on the kubernetes.io docs. And within that context also, this pattern has been recognized. I mean, it was just not us who mentioned that this is a reality. There were others also who were participating, who saw in real world this pattern exists in the Kubernetes world as well. Just the one clarification that I'd like to make, in the kubernetes.io doc on multi-tenancy, this pattern is called multi-customer tenancy. Okay, so the multi-instance multi-tenancy is what we've been calling, and we thought that's much more, it doesn't sort of refer to any customer or anything. And so we like to call it multi-instance, multi-tenancy, but in the documentation is multi-customer. All right, so how do you go about creating such a pattern or achieving that end goal on Kubernetes today? Okay, so all of us have been using Kubernetes, and it's the natural question is, well, if I want to do this, how can I do it today? So it's very straightforward to begin with. I mean, we can start imagining that, okay, let's say if I have a WordPress Helm chart, then all I need to do is create one instance of the application per namespace of that Helm chart. So just do Helm install and specify different namespaces, and it should be done, right? That's our sort of we can start thinking about this problem or the solution from that step. Well, it's true, but then there are a lot of additional things that you will need to do custom automation for. For example, how do you really isolate these beyond namespaces if you want to ensure that there is no cross traffic between the pods of the two instances? How do you ensure that? Or whoever is doing, so that's the isolation that you have to need to ensure. Or how about ensuring that the person who is doing your Helm install has only minimal set of permissions, whatever are needed for that application, and nothing more. That's the security point. The third aspect is, how do you go about monitoring all these different instances? And then if you want to do day-to-day operations, then how do you go about seamlessly upgrading all these application instances? So that's where KubePlus comes into play. KubePlus is a turnkey solution to create multi-instance, multi-tenancy pattern on Kubernetes, which takes any Helm chart and delivers it as a service by ensuring that the application instances that are created, they are properly isolated. The KubePlus itself, it runs on the cluster, but it doesn't need any cluster admin level permissions. There are simple plugins that we provide for monitoring and upgrades, and we'll see how we can do customization of every instance as well. Okay, so that's the value of KubePlus. So how do we do that? And as I go through the demo and then follow on slides, this will become clear. But to begin with, the idea is, this is the key idea here, that KubePlus has one CRD that we define called as resource composition. And this CRD, as part of its inputs, it takes a link to a Helm chart. It could be a publicly available Helm chart, or it could be a local Helm chart. So that goes into the input for the CRD. And what KubePlus generates is, actually, it will generate a CRD to represent that Helm chart. So if WordPress Helm chart is provided as input to resource composition, then KubePlus will install a new CRD, WordPress service CRD, for example, in that cluster. And then advantage of doing this is this CRD then forms sort of the control point for KubePlus to ensure all these properties. Okay, so for example, for isolation, every application instance is deployed in a separate namespace. So when you create an instance of WordPress CRD, KubePlus will deploy it in a new namespace. And KubePlus itself, for security, the permissions that KubePlus runs in the cluster are not cluster admin. In fact, they are like 40%, 48% less than the actual cluster admin permissions. For monitoring, we collect network, storage, memory, and CPU data from Kubelet, persistent volume claims, and cAdvisor. And then upgrades are essentially changing the resource composition to point to the new version of the Helm chart, will lead to creation of new application instances with that new version. And the main customization that you are able to do is underlying charts, values.yaml, they are reified, and they become the properties of the new CRD that is created by KubePlus, and we'll see an example of this. So that's like the high level introduction of KubePlus. Now let's look at the demo. So for demo, I'm going to use this Odoo application from Bitnami. So Bitnami Helm charts, there are like 96 odd Helm charts on Bitnami's repository. So we just take one, and we'll go through some of these steps here. Okay, all right. So here are the steps. I've just documented the steps that I want to go through. So the first thing I want to show, by the way, I have done some of these steps ahead of time just to make sure that our demo goes smoothly. So let me start here. Yeah. So this is the resource composition CRD that KubePlus provides, in which the inputs that we take are the new resource that we want to register in the cluster by the kind name is here. I'm just giving it Odoo service, and that's my chart, which is locally available. So I have downloaded it, and I'm going to refer to that local chart. And so this is the resource composition with which we will start. And then let me just point to you. This is the step here, kubectl create that resource composition. And there is the permissions that KubePlus runs with. We provide utilities to generate scoped kubeconfig files. So in fact, that's the first step. You would essentially install KubePlus with a scoped kubeconfig file. So the Helm install KubePlus will take that scoped kubeconfig file, and all the operations we will do is with that scoped kubeconfig file. So we don't need cluster admin permissions. So the first thing you do is create an instance of resource composition. And so let me show you. That's where I'm going to start this demo, that I have created an instance of resource composition in here. By the way, I'm running these against a GKE cluster. And what I've done is, let me first show you all the CRDs that are there. So these are, some of these CRDs are coming from GKE proper. There are these resource composition events, monitors, and policies. These are the KubePlus CRDs. And the CRD which so these resource composition and all these CRDs are installed when the KubePlus operator is deployed for the first time. Once the operator starts running, the next thing that you do is create an instance of resource composition, which will generate this CRD. Okay. Now, what does this CRD really look like? So let's take a look at that. And for that, I'm just going to use the explain command. Okay, so this is our standard explain, which will, I'm using Odoo service as the name of the kind, because that's the name of the kind I've specified in resource composition. And I'm asking for .spec. And so let's look at that. Essentially what this should show is basically all the values.yaml that exist as part of the underlying Helm chart. Those should, and by the way, I have a video of this as well. Sometimes network can be tricky. So let me bring up side by side a video as well. Let me just scroll this to the point where, yeah, I think here we can look at the video of the output. Yeah, so let me pause here. So what this is basically showing while on the background, yeah, let me pause here. So this is the kubectl explain, which is essentially showing us all the attributes that are part of that the values.yaml. They get reified and reflected as fields of this new API that was created. Okay, so let me just Control-C out of this. Sometimes my network can be problematic. Okay, so I can just go through these steps here. The next step that I'm going to do here is, so here you see all these fields. Now, then there is this kubectl man command. It's a plugin that we provide to enable someone to get a copy of a sample resource. Okay, so if I do this, it should show us. So now what you see here is the resource that we have created from the man plugin. It gave us the actual resource. So I'm going to change the load balancer type to node port. So by the way, this entire spec, I didn't modify it anything. It was there in the values.yaml that just got reflected as spec of this object. And now then what I do is, let's create an instance of that. Okay, so I can create an instance, and instance creation. While the instance is being created, let me talk through how the instance creation happens. So behind the scene, what KubePlus is doing is, let me go back. So instance creation takes about 20 odd seconds. The reason is the architecture of KubePlus is like this. Okay, so you have your controller, then we have a mutating webhook, and then we have a container which is called as a Helmer container. And so all these three together make KubePlus. The controller is managing the CRUD on the KubePlus CRDs. So the resource composition is the KubePlus CRD that is being managed by the controller. And all the new CRDs that KubePlus registers, the CRUD on that is done by the mutating webhook. So we are making use of the mutating webhook for two purposes. One is in its standard fashion to sort of enforce policies very similar to something like Kyverno or OPA. But beyond that, we also use mutating webhook to actually create and manage these application instances. Okay, so this has gone through. Let me just pause here. Yep.
What does that mean? That means you pick up the new resource in the mutating webhook rather than from a watch, and that's what.
So what we do. Sorry, go ahead.
Says, oh, it's in there and it doesn't. Sounds like you're doing that in the webhook.
So webhook, and so you do the you see the arrow between mutating webhook and Helmer. So the mutating webhook is only watching for, I mean, it acts like a watch. It just while the resource is being created, when I said, let's say kubectl create sample udo service, that will be intercepted by mutating webhook. I mean, and I'll show you the mutating webhook, the actual resources that it intercepts. It's very confined to the resources that are of type platform API.kubeplus. And so what the mutating webhook will do is it will keep on watching for any incoming requests which are for these new CRD types which have been registered. And then once it sees that, it works with the Helmer component to actually do the Helm install. And then as part of doing the Helm installation, the values, any modifications that you have done, those are available in the spec properties. So the new object that is being deployed, that is available as the spec properties of those are available in mutating webhook. So the mutating webhook plays a very critical role for us. By the way, it also does not come in the way of any other mutating webhook that might be running. So we have tested this with, let's say if you have Kyverno in place and you are using Kyverno to apply more governance policies at the cluster scope, this will not come in the way of that. It will still work with that without any problems. And so what happens is behind the scene, like let's say, this is a good point to just pause and take a look at. So the command kubectl create sample udo service, this is our standard kubectl command. The sample udo service was created. Let me go back and maybe here I can show you. Now I can just do some quick showcase here. So this sample Udo service was retrieved from the kubectl man plugin that we provide. What it does is it will look at the Helm charts values.yaml, and it will create a spec out of that. I'll also want to show you a very useful thing, which let's say I have it here. Let me just type it. Let's say if I do kubectl describe, I want to show you that the new CRD that got created, that CRD has the Open API spec written properly. Okay, so let me just do describe. So this was generated, the new CRD, and what I want to show you is, okay, so, oh wait, I have to do, I describe not an instance, I have to do this. Yeah, so this is the new CRD that was registered. And if you really wonder what is the challenge in like creating these CRDs on the fly from an underlying Helm chart, which we don't know anything about, the main challenge is how do you, when you are registering a CRD, let's say this is the Udo service CRD that we are registering, how do you really adhere to this requirement that we want the CRD to have the Open API v3 schema properly specified, because that is now requirement since I think Kubernetes 1.22 onwards, you cannot have CRDs without the Open API schema for the underlying spec properties. And so, we are able to do that by when the CRD is being registered, we look through the charts values.yaml, and based on the values.yaml, we prepare this Open API v3 schema. Okay, so all the properties that are defined in the charts values.yaml, they are reflected here in the CRD, and that's why, because the CRD is now well formed with all the Open API schema and so on, we are able to issue statements like this, where we can create an instance of the new kind without knowing anything about the spec ahead of time. And so once you do this, let me, maybe this is the version that is running. I'll just now focus on. So this is how the deployment is happening of a new instance. But yeah, so this was the instance that I deployed this morning for 5 hours ago. So I'll just now demo here with what I have. So beyond that, then you can, from multi-tenancy point of view, you can, let's see if we are able to see all the different resources that were created. Okay, so so we have a kubectl plugin app resources, which will just give a bird's eye view of all the things that KubePlus creates when it creates an instance of this new kind. So Udo service was the kind, and instance of that by the name sample Udo service was created in the default namespace, but then rest of the other things were created in this namespace. So we just have this convention that we will create the same name of the namespace by which you are creating your instance. So that's why we have sample Udo service, name of the instance, and the namespace, we just create that as the name. So if you look till here, all these are resources which are directly defined in that Helm chart. So there is a Postgres, and then the actual, there are secrets, service accounts, PVCs, and so on, deployment stateful set, and so on. But then towards the end, these two here, these are the network policies that KubePlus has generated. So you can define network policies and resource quotas when you create the instance of resource composition. So this is just showing that by default, there is the allow external traffic and restrict cross network, cross namespace traffic. These are the two that we define by default. The last line here, the resource quota, this is actually not generated by KubePlus because in this particular resource composition, I didn't specify any resource quotas. But I think this is coming by default from GKE. If you create a new namespace, you get this sort of resource quota created. So we have this plugin. The other plugin that exists, which can be very handy, is of course, you can look at the app URL. So maybe we can look at that. But because this application is not up yet, I think that will not show anything interesting. But let me show you the metrics plugin. So this metrics plugin is quite handy to get the resource consumption, underlying resource consumption. So you have CPU, storage, network, memory, ingress and egress. So this is a pretty output, but we have Prometheus output as well. And this is just showing how many pods are there as part of this deployment, number of containers and so on. So quite handy. And so just to quickly mention, so in our sort of the product offering, the commercial offering, what we do is we have a centralized control plane on using which you can manage SaaS delivery across multiple clusters. So multiple clusters for different customers you can have, and you can manage it there. And there is built-in Prometheus integration. So in sort of a single pane of glass, you can see. So for example, and this is I have it running in my Vagrant environment, so I can quickly show you. So this is showing for on my Minikube. O service is my Odoo service. I can look at historical sort of tracking of CPU and memory. So you get some built-in Prometheus integration there.
So you're saying this runs that metrics command and persists whatever it gets.
Correct. It runs the metrics command, and you just get a very sort of single place to manage all the clusters, all the different services you could have. So the notion of a service is the resource composition that I talked about. You could create multiple instances of that, referring to different versions of, let's say, Odoo release 1, Odoo release 2, and so on, and then the application instances. So this is like the place where you, from a B2B vendor, can manage all their running application instances. There is built-in Prometheus and troubleshooting. We also provide a very quick way to, let me see if I can show you. There is a place to run kubectl commands as well. So there is a kubectl command line shell, and so I can run these commands from my control center, and we will see this the pods running. And I think in my this Minikube environment, I had done some testing with Kubernetes, so we have that here. So this is the place where one can come and manage all of this. KubePlus SaaS Manager itself also runs as, it doesn't run on Kubernetes, it's containerized. It can be run on any VM. It can be run on cloud. So it's standard web app. Yeah.
Is that open source, Dev?
Yeah, so the SaaS Manager itself is not open source. The container is available free for download, but yeah, the support around that, that's where we are sort of the main product offering is.
Well, I understand, and I'm not saying good or bad about that, but can I run, like, I'm just not clear. Could I run this on my own in a
you can run it on your own. There is, like, apart from the container being open source, I mean, freely available, there is, just Docker run is never sufficient. There are like additional steps you need to do around that. So those parts are not freely available.
Okay.
Yeah. And so like as a summary of all of this, the main sort of appeal to the community is we are looking for folks to try their own Helm charts, mainly to see if there are any gaps that we have missed, or if there are any things that we have not really accounted for. From our end, what we have done is Bitnami's repository, it has like 96 charts. And so we have gone through all of those. I mean, it did uncover some gaps, and we are actively working. Currently, all those are, whatever the gaps we found, they are we have created issues on KubePlus repository for all those. But to just give you some high-level statistics, out of those 96 charts, 68 worked without any. I mean, they just worked. There were a few others which ran into some permission-related issues, which we are now working through. And so we have a roadmap there. So take a look at the roadmap. If you see any feature or want to see any feature, definitely just mention there on that GitHub link. And yeah, I mean, that's all I have. Let me, just open it for more further questions. Any thoughts you all have? Let me maybe put this in front as the steps that we sort of went through. So the ones that are highlighted, those are the kubectl plugins that we provide. So the man, app resources, app logs, app URL, metrics, and connections.
So I'll kick it off. I'll represent the Ouija platforms. And one of the things we've been thinking about is how you provision out new capabilities like databases, like, WordPress service into your cluster. But we're not really thinking about deploying a complete application. We're more thinking about, I need a database. Oh, I need a Kafka broker. So that's what I'm wondering. Would if every tenant might need their own database or their own Kafka broker, would this be an appropriate thing to use, or is this?
Yes, no, it will be let me maybe take back to this particular picture, right? So it could be full-fledged applications like WordPress, and but it could also be just a database instance. And in fact, let me bring up. Because what you ask is a very great question. So if you look at the Bitnami Helm charts, right, this actually answers the question quite well. If you look at all the charts that exist in there, they refer to full-fledged applications, but they also refer to infrastructure services like database or even cert manager, console, concourse. Some of these are full-fledged applications. Others are, you might just install them as part of a broader application stack, but you still have to deploy that, right? And if you have a requirement where every end user is going to need their own Cassandra instance, then I mean, rather than directly doing Helm install, but then struggling with all the other automation around isolation, and you don't, like with our solution, you don't really need to modify the Helm chart at all. Whatever
namespace, that's one thing I'm like, is there stuff in there that should I be using that namespace for other components?
That's a good question. So the permissions that we grant to our kubeconfig files, they if you were to use those kubeconfig files and try to deploy some other application into that namespace, most likely that will not work, because those permissions are scoped to only the things that are needed in that Helm chart. Having said that, if you are cluster admin and if you have complete permissions, then you might end up deploying other things in that namespace. But I mean, that's not how you would generally do it, right? Because it's again going to impact how the metrics are collected. So the pods, which are not non-application pods, if there are there in that namespace, then they will sort of skew the metrics.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on. That's exactly what I kind of, because a lot of folks think about namespace as a unit of tenancy. So they want their database and their API server all in the same namespace. But you would say they need a couple. Yeah,
correct.
Or else you would say, well, KubePlus is designed to package the whole thing and take over. It should be an application.
Yeah. I mean, in that situation, what like if you look at this particular output here, right? So like Odoo, what they are doing is it's the application has the database And if there would have been an API gateway in there. It depends on how the application is getting packaged. Sometimes you may split out different components. You may have your databases as a separate chart, which you are deploying separately, in which case you would end up creating CRDs, like when using KubePlus, you would create separate CRD for the database and then a separate CRD to represent your application chart. And that will be okay. Or you could create one chart in which your database chart is sort of the sub chart, and then that single application chart with everything bundled together, that can be deployed. So it depends on every team, every situation might warrant something different.
Yeah, I hear you. So one pattern might be, I need a database, but the way I need, if I want to use the same namespace, I have to use a chart. I have to put it all.
Yeah, correct.
Plus.
Correct.
Cool. Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, just to referring back to our conversation, Josh, what I remember, like from before this presentation, at the beginning we said that, yeah, Helm operator, we talked about it, right?
So yeah, let's bring it up now, because we'll the recording, if somebody wants to watch. So yeah, what I asked you before, and I do want to ask it again, is how do you compare, contrast this with operator lifecycle manager,
yeah,
and especially the one that wraps a Helm chart?
Yeah. So let me try to. Yeah. So what I think, how I'm not caught up with the current capabilities of OLM, but I do remember when we were looking at existing options, the Helm operator did surface in our investigation, and what we realized was, at that point, Helm operator, the way it was designed and the way the examples were sort of documented, if I wanted to start with a Helm chart and create an operator, so Kubernetes native API for that Helm chart, what used to happen, if I recall correctly, was you ended up actually generating all the, use the operator SDK and provide the Helm chart as input to it, and it will actually generate all the Go files and everything, which the types.go and everything, which was now specific for that particular application Helm chart. So if it was Apache, then you would get a new CRD, of course, but all of that would still be generated at the code level. And then there were steps to package it up as a pod and then deploy that pod into the cluster, which is now your Apache operator, which is able to handle CRUD on Apache resources. So what we realized was, if I were to do this for many different applications, because as a platform team, I might have to manage Apache, Jenkins, and maybe something else, right? So I cannot afford to have 3 different pods, which are just the operator pods running in my cluster. And I mean, it just doesn't scale if you have many different kind of applications that you want to create a Kubernetes API for. And so this is where KubePlus, like technically the difference that KubePlus brings in is you don't really need any other pod to run as an operator. So if you look at, and this is the get pods listing that we are seeing in front of us, KubePlus is the only pod that is running from the KubePlus point of view. All the other things are actually the kube system, so we can ignore those, and that's my application pod. And so with this single KubePlus operator pod, we are able to create and manage new CRDs for any Helm chart out there. And so that's where, in my view, this is simpler to work with, as if I'm the provider and cluster admin, then I'm not looking at many different operator pods, one each for separate Helm chart. So that's the Helm operator specific. As far as OLM is concerned, So like broadly, OLM does the lifecycle management of the operators. There are releases and channels and all, like really evolved capabilities of managing the operator itself. With KubePlus, the only operator that we are managing is the KubePlus operator, right? Because the others are, from KubePlus point of view, the others are not operators at all. They are, I mean, the CRDs do get created, but they are, all of them are still getting managed through KubePlus. So let's say, from comparing to OLM, if I want to release a new version of Odoo service, what I will end up doing is I'll create a new instance of resource composition, and which will have a different kind name. So let's say Odoo service release 2, and that new kind will get registered in the cluster. And so the lifecycle management of those kinds is completely done by KubePlus. And the lifecycle management of KubePlus itself is a simple Helm command. I mean, it's in order to install Helm, KubePlus operator, all we depend on is Helm. There is a Helm chart for that. So we are not so much evolved like OLM as far from the release and channels and those kind of capabilities. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes, I mean, what I'm kind of hearing is that OLM has a lot of complexity and KubePlus is just one controller. And
yeah, I mean, that probably is needed. I mean, I haven't looked at in what all contexts that complexity comes up. Probably it is essential complexity. So for whatever the use cases that is being targeted, you need those capabilities probably. But yeah, in KubePlus, we don't have those kind of release channels and those things.
Right, I guess it makes it easier if somebody's publishing something publicly and it needs to pull that. It gives more of a process around that back end.
Yeah, exactly. In OLM's case, those are probably more, like involved processes which are simplified. With KubePlus, because we are making our focus is very specific. We are not really even thinking about those other problems.
Because you're focused on Helm charts.
Yeah, Helm charts, and we are focused on only like making sure solving that one specific problem of how to really seamlessly enable multi-instance, multi-tenancy, where certain things like network policies, resource quotas, isolation, that is completely taken care of, and a platform engineer, he or she doesn't need to really worry about that automation. It will all be given to you out of box. And we started with Helm charts as the only format, and currently also that's the only format we support, because just it's widely used, and we thought that will be the right thing to do, rather than invent a new format or do something which is very custom. We want that's like the constraint that we have put on ourselves. If it works through Helm, we want to be able to be there. KubePlus needs to support whatever Helm is able to do or represent.
Well, thank you. Those are my questions.
Just one question from my side. I'm not sure if I missed this, but how would KubePlus interact with GitOps tools like Flux or Argo CD or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question, Thomas. So in fact, in our roadmap, that is one of the items that has come up. So right now the answer is it's work in progress. We don't have complete testing done yet. At the high level, I don't see any problem. It should work in a natural way. But yeah, beyond that, I won't be able to comment much, because we are still figuring that out, the GitOps support, and that's a roadmap item.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a little tricky because you got to update the resource compositions and
Correct.
then the actual resources.
But you nailed it, George. That's the work that we have to do. It's not there yet, where resource composition gets updated, and then all the running Helm releases that are dependent or that were built from that resource composition, they will be updated. They will need to be updated. I mean, that's the high level idea.
This was also why I asked, because I saw that you have a lot of CRDs, and how you get them in sync in a GitOps process.
Yeah, no, GitOps is definitely something. Somebody else had asked us about it on the roadmap. So one of the features that we'll be looking at the next, how to enable that.
Perfect, thank you.
Cool.
So I think we are already out of time, almost.
So let me stop share, see face-to-face everyone. Yeah, I think it's just 3 of us remaining. So I think this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, if you sort of circulate it in other channels, want me to come and present this again in platform working group, just let me know. Yeah.
You're
also if you need some.
I just posted in there. If you're interested, there is a demo. I made it like a year ago that generates a Helm chart for Potato Head and then pushes it out in the operator based way. Maybe we could add one for the KubePlus based way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
Cool.
Also, if you need some help or support from the tech side, feel free to contact.
So yeah, I mean the main and Josh, you were not there when Thomas and we were chatting about this. Is one of our goals is to see if we get enough people interested and then potentially approach Sandbox. So yeah, I mean it's all open. I know the standard evaluation criteria for Sandbox is quite high. There are many criteria, and so yeah, it depends on how much interest there is in the community, and yeah, based on that, we are definitely open to pursuing that channel, that target as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think good step. Come and spread the good word and get people trying it. I mean, I'm definitely seeing some relationship here to kind of what a couple of the other like Crossplane and Kratix are trying to do a little bit, like create a guy that underneath
correct
other guys.
No, in fact, the resource composition idea that we sort of landed on, that was inspired by similar idea I think Crossplane had. This was a year and a half ago when we sort of realized for that's how we want to do it, and that, in fact, that was the time when we were really looking closely at Helm operator and how it is doing things, and then we realized maybe that's not how we want to go, but then what's the alternative, because we do still want to be able to do all of this. And so yeah, Crossplane was something that we looked at, and some of the ideas, resource composition notion actually is inspired from them.
I bring that up because that might be an opportunity also. We're looking in the platforms working group to bring together projects that are similar like that, and then have them learn more from each other. So just FYI, I'll keep you in mind.
Yeah, definitely. If there is any session happening where Crossplane folks are going to come, definitely ping me, and maybe we can have something joint as well with Crossplane later on.
Cool.
Just another thing to be honest, I know your project now for I think 1.5 years, and I took a look on the stats of the project, and I think you have around 400-500 stars at the moment. And from if you want to go Sandbox, I would go for it.
Oh really?
I mean, in the worst case, you get rejected.
But yeah, I mean, see, to be very honest, it's around that time, year and a half, I think exactly year and a half ago, we did apply for Sandbox, and at that time we got rejected. We were not, there was not any recommendation of, go and get more contributors or anything. It was a just rejection sort of decision. And so, I mean, I understand these decisions have a lot of broader aspects that they look at, And so given that experience that we have gone through, I want to, when I want to approach it, I want to make sure that, there is enough community. Otherwise, then I don't want to go through that same, decision again.
Yes, but if you plan to go for sandbox, just reach out to us.
Yeah. Definitely.
And we will try to support you as far as possible. So we don't have any influence on the.
I know. In fact,
decision.
That was, I've seen TOC will refer projects to the CNCF tags. And so I thought, okay, let me just first come to the tag and present it. That way you all are aware. In case in the future we do decide to go to sandbox, then you are now all aware of what we are doing.
And I'll publish these notes and the link to the video and put it in an issue, so that will be referenceable too for them in the future.
Okay, perfect. That will be so awesome, Josh.
But also, if you need some help for the sandbox proposal and so on, just feel free
yeah,
to reach out to us.
Yeah, definitely. We would love to become sandbox. It just after having gone through that initial decision 1.5 years back, I'm just wary of not to approach it with everything really well in place.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, awesome.
Okay, perfect. But I have to jump now.
Yeah. I think we are. Thank you so much, Josh and Thomas, and let's be in touch.
All right.
Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.